I'm a Bama alum, and I'm proud of the SEC. I like that we're in a great conference,
Sure.
and of course, yes, I want the other schools to be good because then you're beating quality opponents. You're not beating up on the weak sisters every week, which inflates your own value. So I like it that Alabama has to beat quality SEC teams. But I am not what a majority of these SEC fans seem to be, and that they're just absolutely blind, want the conference to win everything. It's kind of a I'm kind of a hip I'm a Bama grad, but I'm kind of a hypocrite. I like the conference to do well, but I'll never root for anybody else in the conference. I don't ever want Tennessee to win a game. I don't I mean I might root for Auburn against ISIS. I mean if Auburn played the national team of Iran, I might root I probably wouldn't root for Auburn. I would just hope that Iran lost. Uh, so there, I don't have this blind loyalty where it's, SEC. It just only in as much as it arrogantly helps Alabama by having the rest of the conference good. But
So, the LSU Clemson national championship game, did you have a rooting interest?
yes, I did. I could not actively hope that LSU won, but I was still stinging from 2016, not 2018. The 2018 blowout loss to Clemson doesn't hurt me as a Bama fan because they just completely demolished us. They stole our manhood. The 2016, that's a natty that got away from us. We let that get away,
Sure.
or it would have been a three-peat. That's what hurt. So I wanted Clemson to lose that, and then Bama could say, well, LSU, their toughest game was against us, and they won the natty, and that's 3 for them this century. Makes the conference look good. Mm-hmm. But it was tough. It was tough.
Okay. Just curious.
And I'll say also, and I'm curious as to what maybe the chat room thinks about this, because there's a lot of people in the chat I'm seeing right now whose opinions I value, and yours as well, of course, Mark, is how much of the dynamic in SEC loyalty is also the fact that you do have you've got the Saints, the Falcons, the Titans. I mean, you do have a few professional teams, but most of these states are not heavily invested in their professional sports teams.
Yeah, has a lot to do.
They're not and certainly not like the upper Midwest,
Yeah, because like you say, it's a different NFL scene in the South than it was just 20 or 25 years ago, because you do have more teams, but roots run deep. And the roots for most football fans in the South, they may now root for Jacksonville. If you live in northern Florida, you may be like a casual Jacksonville Jags fan because, hey, it's cool, we got an NFL team, but it's nothing close to I'm a Gator fan. And like you say, in terms of long-standing NFL franchises, shoot, the Saints and the Falcons, I don't consider those long-standing NFL franchises. They're not like the Bears and the Packers from the 30s, the beginning of the league. Though you're talking 66, 67, and those are the two long-standing NFL teams in the South. So NFL football in the South is very new, historically speaking.
Yeah, and you had when Bryant was making his run in Tuscaloosa in the 60s and the 70s, the NFL team in the NFL team in the South was who? The Saints and maybe the Dolphins.
Yeah.
Which is not really the South. It's Miami. No. That was AF, that was not until the late 60s. So, I mean, the who's your grandpa rooting for? The generational love is not in the NFL. Like my grandparents were diehard Bear fans, going back to the Hallis days of the 50s and the 60s.
Sure.
And they remember Butkus and Sayers and and all those teams, and they can remember Bart Starr playing for the Packers and all that goes back, and Otto Graham for Cleveland,
Yeah.
so there's just all the history that works for the SEC's favor to make them so their fans so passionate for the college game. A lot of that passion is in the NFL around the Great Lakes and the industrial Midwest. So I mean, it's not like one's more important than the other. I think that plays into why there's such a difference in conference loyalty between the SEC and the Big Ten. It's not that Big Ten fans don't love the Big Ten. It's just, you go to an Iowa game, nobody's chanting Big Ten, Big Ten,
Well, I think I've been around it long enough in different areas of the country, Midwest, Northeast, and in the South, and covered it in all those spots. And obviously talking to all of you on a regular basis and watching it for as long as I have, I think this is pretty confirmed. There's more conference pride in the SEC among SEC fans than any other conference. I also think clearly there's more conference pride in the Big Ten among Big Ten fans than the rest of the conferences. The other three, I wouldn't be able to distinguish there being any more in the ACC versus the Big 12 versus the Pac-12. It depends on the person at various levels. But I think the SEC is clearly number one and the Big Ten number two, ironically, both on the field, but also in terms of just, yes, fan pride in their conference. And the point that you bring up is interesting because I've long held the belief that what you just frameworked, we both did about the South and the newness of NFL football in the South versus the Midwest, that it's somewhat, I don't know if impressive is the right word, but admirable maybe, that Big Ten fans are as staunch college football fans as they are, because really the NFL, most of the older traditional franchises are in that same footprint. Like you say, the Browns, the Lions, the Bears, the Packers, the Vikings, even to this point, are now 62 years old. So there's both strong college football and NFL football ties in Big Ten country.
Well, I appreciate that. I just thought we would take a different look at that, and instead of just talking about Bama and Georgia, we talk about the conference as a whole. Everybody, please, you know the drill. We've been down the road before. It doesn't change your experience. The Amazon link, match the thumbs up button, and not only that, tell people about Mark. Don't just come in here and enjoy it and then keep it as a secret. Let your buddies know, hey, you got to get over here to this. Share the stream. Share it. Go on and tell your Facebook friends, your Instagram friends, hey, this is Mark Rogers guy, blah, blah, blah. That's how we increase the audience. That's how we keep it going.
Big Ten people have just as much pride in their conference as SEC people. They just don't have all the championships and all the varied teams that have won championships. That's why you don't see that Big Ten pride as much as you do the SEC. So I always remember those kind of anecdotal examples of that kind of, hey, we're Big Ten people, we root for the Big Ten. So you're kind of rolling your eyes or kind of scrutinizing what I'm saying. Do you not agree?
I somewhat agree. So I do believe that SEC football fans generally have, and I've got no way to measure this. This is just based on what I see on television, what we discuss here, what I've known, what I've perceived, and what I've experienced by living in the Midwest for half of my life, living in the Northeast, working for a certain company for half my life, but 7 years covering SEC football, and not covering it like I cover it now, covering it on the sideline, in the press box, in the locker room, all that. I do think that because of a number of things that we've talked about tonight, there being NFL teams, well-established historical NFL teams in the Midwest, it's everybody only has a certain amount of attention span and time in their lives to devote to entertainment / sports. So it's only natural that if you have an NFL team, and the NFL is the most popular sport in America, that your attention, your pride, all of that is going to be taken up to a certain extent. That your loyalties are going to be split to a certain extent, versus being just, okay, we live in Mississippi. There's not an NFL team within 5 hours of here. We root for Ole Miss or Mississippi State. The other thing, so that's where I somewhat disagree with you. Where I agree with you is I think you brought up a really good point about it's easy to have pride and then be vocal about it when your conference is winning national championships. So maybe you don't have any more pride. You're just free to communicate and shout out loud on social media and otherwise about that pride, because people like to brag. People like to be attached to winners. And when they are, you're going to boast about that, versus somebody can be just as loyal of a Big Ten fan. But if the Big Ten rep just got blasted in the playoffs, what are they going to say? They're not going to say the Big Ten's the best conference in America. True.
Yeah, but I see people on chat boards and stuff like that where, like, for instance, before Georgia and Alabama got to the playoff this year, they were talking about how the Big Ten had this. Maybe it wasn't this past year. It was something where the Big Ten had a really good bowl record for some of the minor bowls against the SEC. It was like maybe the Outback or the Music City or whatever, and it was like this kind of boasting. And then once the playoff started, that kind of went out the window. So I don't know. I don't know. It just seems like for my cousins in Indiana, and obviously when my mom was keeping up with sports, it just seemed to be kind of this boastful, hey, we're Big Ten people, we root for the Big Ten, and I don't know. It just seems like that. I don't know. This kind of arrogance that Big Ten people have about, we're just above that. And I don't believe that at all. I think Big Ten people are just as proud of their conference as SEC. They just don't have the championships the SEC has. And when you see the tremendous, and again, I don't like to throw out records on this whole forum. I don't like, beating my chest or whatever. I think this is should be more of a forum of people that just love the sport, want to talk about their teams or whatever. But you have to admit, when you have 6 different teams that won national championships since the BCS era, I mean, that's just, you can't, there's nothing you can say about that compares.
Well, Porter, you should know you're talking to the wrong person. So there's something I can say about it. Bottom line, yeah, you're right. The SEC has been the best conference since the BCS started. I don't think it was the best conference necessarily. I think there was an argument there for the first 6-7 years of the BCS, but then in the mid 2000s, 05, 06, the SEC took over. But anyway, and there is a difference between who has the best team or the best teams, 2 or 3, versus who has the best conference, top to bottom. That's not necessarily always going to be the same. It's most likely going to be the same. But let's understand that while the SEC has capitalized on its playoff appearances and BCS championship game appearances, the SEC has been given, and I use the word given, have the teams earned it? Yes, they have earned it, but it's not the NFL playoffs. They didn't go out and earn based on a formula a playoff spot. They were given. It's an invitational, both the BCS and the playoff. The SEC has been given many more slots than any other conference, both in the BCS era and the playoff era. So when you're given more opportunities, in 2011, how could the SEC not win the national championship, for example?
Well, going back to the BCS era, Well, I think you had the two best teams in 2011. I think it was pretty obvious, and I understand,
the two best teams. Yes, I believe those were the two best teams, but those should not have been the two teams playing in the national championship game.
I totally agree about that. You're exactly right about that. But let me counter what you just said. You said the SEC has not earned it's not the NFL playoffs. They've not won their way into the playoff. I disagree. Based on, okay, let's go back. There's only been one and done team from the SEC make the playoff.
Okay, I'm not talking about what they've done with the opportunities. I'm talking about being gifted the opportunities,
but those are earned. Those are earned. I mean, you can't tell me that.
No, they're earned to a certain extent, and this is why we need an expanded playoff. There have been teams out that had just as good a qualifications as a team from the SEC. I can go through a number of years.
I agree. I think probably the one that I think about the most is 2014 TCU was an outstanding team. I hate they didn't get a chance, but you have to admit when an SEC team, other than Alabama in 2014, the first year of the playoff, you have to admit when an SEC team goes to the playoff, they win. They don't go one and done. That goes for LSU. That goes for Georgia. Georgia both times. They won against Oklahoma, won against Michigan.
That's not my
Alabama.
Point.
What's that?
I already stated that. That's not my point. My point is we can go through a number of years in the playoff and more so in the BCS era in which the SEC was given the opportunity and other conferences with other teams that had just as valid a resume were not. They've been given more opportunities.
Yeah, I understand that. But my point is when given the opportunity, the SEC capitalized.
Yeah, I said the same thing. Yeah.
So when you develop a reputation of losing like Oklahoma in the playoff, the Big 12 should not get the benefit of the doubt. The SEC should.
I don't think there should be a doubt. We shouldn't have people selecting playoff spots.
Well, I mean, I disagree about that, but you and I both agree that I didn't know you were for the expansion of the playoff. So I'm glad to hear that you're now in favor of that, because you and I went back and forth one night about the expansion, and I've
always wanted the expansion. Shoot, I wrote a paper on it when I was 16 years old. I was thinking about that in 1984.
You just don't want the 12 team where you get the bye. Is that correct?
I don't want buys.
Okay. All right.
They're unfair.
So you've
explained why you don't mind the buys.
Well, obviously I don't mind the buys. I love the buys because I love the scenario. Like I said before, I love this. If I'm Texas A&M in 2020 and it's a 12-team playoff, heck yeah, let somebody else go to the SEC and get their brains beat in. I'll be happy to stay at home and wait for my first round championship or first round game in the playoff. I'll be happy to do that. I mean, the playoff is what it's about now. I don't really care about conference championships. I mean, they're nice banners to put up, but it's all about the playoff now. And once your team has been there and has been there, more than once, you kind of get addicted to it. I hate to say it, and I love being there. It's an amazing event, but I am for expansion. So what do you want? An 8-team playoff?
Well, before I answer that question, I wish in a way that we could go back to, and I know I push hard on here, playoff, expanded playoff. I've been talking about it since I started the channel. That was 12 years ago. And like I say, I wrote a paper that was probably that thick in 1984 when I was like a junior in high school on expanding the college football playoff to 16 teams. Anyway, but part of me wishes when you say conference championships don't mean anything, you know what? In a sense, you're right, but I hate that. I grew up thinking the Big Ten championship was everything. And thinking, you know what? I even knew at the age of 9 or 10 years old this whole national championship thing is a bit of a joke. I even realized that at like 9 years old, thinking, who are these knuckleheads that get to vote on this? And I could even look and say, they beat them. They beat them and them. Why are they there? These guys don't know what they're doing. Shoot, I was freaking 9 years old, and I could figure out that a bunch of newspaper AP writers didn't know what the hell they were doing then. So I was like, this national championship thing is a joke. I got to find out the next morning after New Year's Day who won the national championship. Well, that's a joke. And now in 3 weeks, I'm going to watch the NFL playoffs and the Super Bowl. That's the way. Oh, yeah. So I was more like, okay, Big Ten championship, Rose Bowl. That's what matters.
And I respect that.
I mean, that because a conference championship should mean the SEC championship should be enormous. And maybe we should just leave everybody out, just conference championships. And then you know what? That conference championship would mean everything.
Yes, it would. But I don't see that ever happen. I think you're going to go to that.
Oh, it's not going to happen. No.
So what is your model then? What do you
if we got to play in video games and these guys didn't get hurt and we didn't need to worry about them playing too much football, I'd go 16 teams. I'd love that.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's not fair to the kids. That's too many games.
So it's 8.
8. Okay. So five conference champions and then 3 at-larges?
3 at-large, either with or without the group of 5 being formally included or excluded. I don't care. Do it one way or the other. I don't want them to be in this vague place where, are they included this year? No. Yeah, they're good enough. No, they're. I don't want Cincinnati playing a crappy schedule, but they get in because they're undefeated. I don't care. Either way, either the best group of 5 gets in, and that's their one spot, or exclude them completely and say, we don't care if you beat everybody 60-0. Nobody's getting in from the group of 5. Play your own playoff if you want to.
Yeah.
One or the other.
I like that, including the group of 5. I think it's, you like I always say, I love the sport. I want to do what's best for the sport. And I think someone who's at Memphis doing 2 days right now should have a shot at getting in, just like somebody at Oklahoma should have a shot to get in. And I what do you think about making that one spot for the group of 5? They have to get within. They have to be at a certain ranking to get into that spot.
No. We're going back to putting power into the hands of people voting on rankings. I don't trust those people.
Well, you're going to have to with
you don't have to.
At the at-large.
Right.
The at-large, you have to have.
Nope.
How do you determine the at-large?
Well, why, rankings. These knuckleheads don't know how to rank teams. Why am I? I don't
understand what you're saying. I mean, you're saying you can't. You're not. I'm all for conference champions getting a direct, a bid into the thing. That's fine, but you're going to have at-larges, and somebody has to vote on that. And
they don't. Why?
Well, who would determine the at-larges?
Record / strength of record. I posted a video where I went through the whole thing and said, we are choosing at-large teams based on your record, understanding that none of this should happen without fixing the schedule. The schedule has to be fixed first because that obviously has a huge impact on the season. So Baylor can't play nobody like they always do, and USC play some murderer's row non-conference get. So the scheduling has to be fixed first. So I'm not going to go through that, but I've gone through it before, and we'll attack that next off season again. You got to fix the scheduling first so it's equitable. And then you go by record and you go by strength of record, meaning how strong your performance was versus the difficulty of the schedule. And that's what you do. And you take people out of it.
Well, I mean, to me, you're just getting back to computers then, just like when in 2000 when Florida State went.
No, you're getting to the results on the field.
Well, Florida State lost to Miami, but Florida State played for the national championship. I mean, that was a computer-generated mistake in 2000. It wasn't
I'm not 100% on this, Porter, but I'm almost positive because I've looked into this that there is no BCS championship game outcome, meaning the two teams that were selected that weren't selected by the people. The vote was 2/3 of the deal. Like if we looked up the AP rankings and the coaches poll rankings for that season, I think they put Miami in.
No, it was a computer. I'm pretty
I
sure.
don't know about
But
that. Washington should have been in anyway.
What's that?
It shouldn't have been Miami. It should have been Washington.
Oh, Washington. Well, I don't.
Washington beat Miami.
Maybe I've been watching too many of the 30 for 30s and watched too much of the U to think it was it should have been Miami.